You are listening to Veterans Action Report on KGRA Digital Broadcasting. I'm your host, Nick, coming to you live from St. Paul, Minnesota.
And I'm Andrew Canales, coming to you live from Evergreen, Colorado.
Every day, veterans are struggling with many issues spanning from homelessness to mental health crisis, often leading to 22 veterans a day taking their own lives. There are veterans all around the U.S. leading the fight to help guide our brothers and sisters to a better life. We will bring you stories from all around the country telling tales of veteran struggles and triumph. Every episode benefits veteran-run nonprofits Warriors Next Adventure, helping veterans fight PTSD through recreational therapy and new adventures. And Houses for Warriors, helping solve the homeless crisis, leading veterans to a better lifestyle. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Veterans Action Report. Sorry about last week. I was traveling. I was in South Carolina, and I just didn't have the ability to go live, so we just threw a rerun on there. So sorry, everybody. We're finally back on Facebook. I'm finally off of my ban. I'm allowed to go back live again. My jail sentence was rough. It was a whole 60 days of not being able to go live, so it's just obnoxious. So we're finally live on Warriors Next Adventure, House for Warriors, Veterans Action Report, KGRA Digital Broadcasting, as well as the YouTubes as well. First off, thank you to KGRA Digital Broadcasting for giving us this time slot. I'm so grateful for you guys because my voice has been massively extended because of you guys and your service. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Go check out KGRA Digital Broadcasting. Go check out their membership. There's a lot of amazing shows on there. They're a fairly conservative network, which is awesome, but there's a lot of really cool stuff on there. If you like aliens and conspiracy stuff, there's a lot of stuff on there that I think is absolutely fantastic. Like UFO researchers, and I listen to Joe Rogan, so I'm one of those guys who likes to talk about aliens and stuff like that because it's interesting, and it's something that people don't really talk about. It's kind of taboo, so it's kind of cool to have a network that actually talks about that stuff, and then has the community service slot with us and a couple of the law enforcement shows as well. So thank you, KGRA. As usual, every episode benefits Warriors Next Adventure and Houses for Warriors. Houses for Warriors run by Andrew Canales over in Evergreen, Colorado. He's got a warrior house over in it's in Denver, but the actual sub name, I can't remember what the name of the city is. He's going to smack me for that. But they actually have a house that they use, and it's a group home for veterans, which is amazing. They have, I think last time I was there, they have 3 veterans that are housed in there. So they actually get veterans off the streets, which is amazing. They also do house renovations for wounded warriors, not for the organization Wounded Warriors, but veterans who are wounded. And right now they're actually doing a full house remodel for this guy who doesn't have use of his legs, and his wife was carrying him up the stairs every day, which is absolutely obnoxious. His wife is absolutely jacked. She's a firefighter, so probably not too hard for her, but it's going to go rough on the legs, on the back eventually. So they're actually putting in an elevator so he can get up to the top floor and in the basement. And Homes for Veterans actually donated about $60,000 to make this happen. So go check out Homes for Veterans as well. Amazing organization. So Warriors Next Adventure, a little recap on the last week and a half. We actually traveled down to South Carolina, and we did quite a bit of traveling. I got some photos here that I'm going to be popping up here and there. We went to a bunch of gyms, and I just wanted to I just wanted to give some notoriety to some of these gyms because they were fantastic. So my buddy Greg and I ended up traveling down to South Carolina, but we actually got stuck in a snowstorm, and we ended up having to stop in Lafayette, Indiana, and we stopped at this amazing gym. These guys were a bunch of murderers. They're under Atos, and these guys were just vicious. Myself and Greg had a rough time with these guys, especially since we were driving all day, and we just got murdered by these guys. But Impact Zone training, these guys are absolutely amazing. Go check these guys out. So we eventually ended up making it down to South Carolina, and I ended up competing in a large tournament. It was a bunch of super fights, which is awesome, down at Triumph Academy. These guys were awesome. So this is everybody that was in the match or in the matches. These guys are amazing. This gym is awesome. I love what they do. I got to meet Josh from DD214 Fightwear. The guy's awesome. I had my boy Greg here working the table for me, did one hell of a job. We raised about $1,500 in a couple different fundraisers throughout the few days that we were out there. And then we ended up heading down. The next gym we went to was my buddy Clay Burwell. Clay is just an amazing person. I absolutely love him. I told him he reminds me of Johnny from Cobra Kai, but not completely stupid, and actually a good gym owner. Absolutely love him. What's up, Jim? So we went out and hung out with Clay. Like I said, Clay is an amazing human. I absolutely love him. Clay's right here in the center here. Absolutely love him. Then we got Oscar and his wife Lisa. A lot of these guys are awesome. We've been hanging out with these guys for a while, and Oscar here actually traveled with me on the jiu-jitsu tour, and so we ended up coming back and do another interview. We actually interviewed Clay for the documentary, which his insight on We Defy Foundation and how much it's helped Oscar. Which, by the way, go check out WeDefy.org. Those guys are amazing. I'm one of their ambassadors. And then we ended up heading down to the Next Element, and I actually taught a seminar to these guys where Derek Kennington, guy's an absolute monster of a black belt. And all these guys were killers. They had one guy, a brown belt from Ecuador, came out and just absolutely crushed me. This guy was like half my size, just mutilated me. But these guys were great. We had a lot of great conversations with these guys. The seminar went absolutely fantastic. And then we headed up to Lycan MMA up in Colombia, and the Wolf Den. Lycan MMA is absolutely amazing. Nader Tanner is a fantastic coach. The students love him. The tournament was fantastic. Some of the best jiu-jitsu I've ever seen. It was a 16-man tournament, and the winner won $5,000. Absolutely amazing. Warriors Next Adventure ended up sponsoring that. And I got one thing I want to show you guys. So my buddy and Greg and I actually got lucky enough, and we got invited. We met a guy named Ryan. Ryan has connections to the Apache pilots. And so we met up with two pilots, and Dale was one of the guys that I was talking to. And what he was telling me was when they're in training, they actually have to go pick up a 30 millimeter shell off of the shooting range. And they're just disgusting, just black and nasty, all full of carbon and everything. And they have to polish it. They have to carry it with them everywhere they go until they actually get their complete flight, right? So they're official pilots, and they have to carry these things around with them. They have to polish them up because while you're in training, they'll ask you to pull it out, and you'll have to answer a bunch of questions unless yours like the most polished. So as we were getting ready to leave, I coined both of those guys with the Warriors Next Adventure coins, and he actually gave me his round, which I think is one of the coolest things in the world. This is a 30 millimeter round out of an Apache helicopter, which is one of the coolest gifts I've ever gotten. So anytime I get a really cool gift, I actually put it up on my my mantle here. Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. And then today I ended up getting a book. Brian Talley, we had him on the show. I didn't choose this job. It chose me. Please go check out this book on Amazon. He's not sponsoring this episode, but he sent me this book, and I figured I'd give him a shout out. Our episode was about about a month ago. I'm actually having him on Warriors Next Adventure podcast here soon. Brian's a great guy. I can't wait to talk to him a little bit more. All right. So again, over the past week, we raised about $1,500. So thank you everybody who we ran into across and started following Veterans Action Report, Warriors Next Adventure, and House for Warriors. I love you guys. I'm going to bring on today's guest, Trisha Wohlfeil. Damn it. I knew I was going to mess that up. She's she's a licensed marriage and family therapist. Absolutely great woman. She's one of the ladies who connected me with Acres for Life Horse Ranch. It's amazing what they're doing out there, and some of the work that she's doing out there. We're gonna have her talk a little bit about that as well. But she happens to be the wife of Greg, the guy who was just traveling with us. So I'll bring her on. Trisha, how you doing? Oh, I'm not getting your sound.
Oh no!
There you go. Unmuted. We're good.
You're good? Okay.
How you doing?
Man, I'm doing good.
So we met. God, what was it? About a year ago, right?
I think so.
Something along those lines.
Yeah.
We've had a couple double dates with me and Mara and you and Greg, and it's been really nice to get to know you guys over the years. And Greg's going to be doing a lot of extra work with us here, especially once he gets out of the Air Force.
Yeah.
But I hope you don't mind me stealing him for a couple days.
He was having fun. He had a good time. It's good.
Oh, it was so much fun. He's one of the hardest workers I've ever had with me. And the funny thing is he's the oldest and he's the highest ranking. And it's like, God, these guys need to get their shit together. Because if I'm seeing the way he's working, I feel bad for the next few people that come with me.
Yeah, like who's going to pick up that slack, right?
You set the bar high. All right, so
I think so too.
Greg reached out to me the other day, said I should have you on, which was like perfect because this is a perfect conversation for what we're doing here on Veterans Action Report. The whole point of this show is to bring veterans information that could really help them. And with what you do with the marriage and family counseling, marriage and family therapy is absolutely amazing. And you also have the Bernadette Brown training, and we want to get into all of that. So first off, how did you get into this type of therapy?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because like I think back to like when I met Greg, I didn't know really much about the military. I wasn't of military family. Oh, Greg's saying hi. That's nice. Thanks for your support. And I remember even when he asked me on our first date, he said, "Oh, I got drill, but then we can go out." And I was like, "Why are you asking me out if you have drill?" I assumed he was gone somewhere.
Yeah.
I didn't realize he was just going to work that day. So we went from that, from me knowing nothing to like, now I've been a military wife for 22 years. And when I was
super
going back
easy, right?
Yeah, it's been a cake. It's been cake. Awesome. When I was getting my training to be a marriage and family therapist, back then the op tempo was very high in Minnesota, and I had connected with some family assistance centers. And I had done some speaking engagements for them. And I said, I'm doing my internship. I'd love to help. Send me, families, kids, all these deployments are going on. I'd just like to help when I could. And I got that was pretty much my whole internship was just, lots of military families. And then when the dads would come back or the moms would come back, then we would do the family stuff. And so it just became a passion for me. I just loved it. And then the Beyond the Yellow Ribbon program started in Minnesota. And when they were asking people to come and talk, they wanted to do community people. So I was like, I would love to come do that. And so I ended up coming on board to talk about reconnecting with your kids. So I was part of the program that we piloted the program in Minnesota, and then they sent it across nationwide. But at the time when we were first starting it and piloting it, there were all these people from the community that were doing this that weren't necessarily military families. And they would go into a room full of guys in uniform and they would come out like shook. Like they were just like, it freaked them out. And I realized okay, that's something it doesn't freak me out. You know what I mean? That feels like home. It feels comfortable. I don't sit in a room full of guys or people, men and women in uniform, and it doesn't freak me out. And so I realized that that's something to start with. And also just knowing I don't have to decode. There's a lot of the language and the lingo I already know. And so, because sometimes people will feel really frustrated because they have to explain everything to a therapist that's not familiar with military culture.
Sure.
And so just having that, and so just became a passion. And then after doing years of that, I told my husband, I'm like, I want to keep doing the talking. I love it, but I want to talk about something I'm super passionate about. I want to do other people's presentations anymore, or things that I'm not as passionate about.
Sure.
And so then I read Daring Greatly, which is a book by Bernadette Brown. And when I remember reading it and I was standing in my kitchen, it's so clear. I'm like, this is it. This is what I want. This is the message. This is what I want to bring to the military. And my first thought was I can't do that. They had training, and I thought that was just really fancy therapists. I don't know. I don't know who the fancy therapists are. I don't know what I thought that would be. Maybe Dr. Phil or something. But you go there and you realize they're just people like you that just are really passionate about this work. So I got certified. So I'm a certified Daring Way facilitator. I got certified to teach her work. So basically all the work is based on the research of Bernadette Brown.
So, okay. Real quick, before we get into this, if anybody has any questions for Trish or myself, you can text our number. This is our Google Voice number. It comes directly to my phone. If you have any questions you want to get read off, if you're not watching on YouTube or Facebook and you can't comment, if you want to text me and ask any questions, 612-467-9489. Again, that's 612-467-9489. Okay. So we talked a little bit about Bernadette Brown, right? So I watched her videos on YouTube. She gave 2 TED Talks. One of them was on vulnerability, and then the second was on shame, right?
Yep. Listening to shame.
So, fantastic speeches. If you've never seen those speeches, I would say, especially for the female audience, I think it was wonderful, in a female's perspective of vulnerability and shame, because it seems very, difficult for a lot of people to talk about, especially women, because, you're the same with men, we have to keep certain things to ourselves, right? And women seems that with a lot of the things that I work with, it seems shame is actually one of the biggest issues in the veteran community for the female veterans. So go check out those videos. So how did you get involved with Bernadette Brown?
Yeah. So what happened is I read the book and I was like overwhelmed, and I had the thought of like, they have training, they certify people. Maybe I could do that. And actually, I think I'd emailed their staff and they're like, you should go to one of our trainings. And I was like, oh, I can't do it. And then I had this moment where I was like, what if I did? What if I did go and get trained? And so I brought it to Greg. He said, you should do it. I've never seen you so like excited or so passionate about something. So I went to the training. I was in San Antonio, Texas. It's like 3.5 days intensive. At the time, she was there. She did the big group stuff, and then we had like breakout sessions and stuff like that. But it's crazy to think now, because back then, I mean, she was famous to me, but she wasn't famous like she is now. Yeah. I mean, she like could walk among us. Now she can't. Like even, it's like Elvis. You can't walk among the populace.
What year was this?
I believe that was, let's see, it's like 8 years ago.
Okay.
So I think it was. Do the math. I know I was looking back on that. I'm like, that's what I like want to fact check. But yeah, I believe I just had a Facebook message like 8 years ago.
Okay. Yeah. Nice. So give us a little rundown of what some of the training was like. Like, what are some of the things that they focused on? What are some of the topics that they focus on?
Well, kind of the main components of Brené's work is the power of vulnerability, right? And kind of combating the myth that vulnerability is weakness, because that's kind of and what she has found in her research. And I should say a little bit about the research she does is grounded theory research, which is basically like, it's not that she came up with a theory and she was trying to prove or disprove it. She's collecting all this data. So thousands and thousands of pieces of data, focus groups, and then she mines the data for the information. What are we finding? What are we hearing over and over again? And so what she found too is that she was looking for like, what makes people more wholehearted? What makes people feel more connected? They also told her about heartbreak and what gets in the way of that. And so she came up with these, finding out the power of vulnerability. Like that's actually the thing, our pathway to all the things we want.
Yeah.
That's not weakness. It's actually our most accurate measure of courage. And so,
I tell my veterans all the time, vulnerability is courage. You get somebody who opens up and actually starts pouring their heart out to you. What more courageous thing can you do? Because you're literally taking down your walls and you are completely vulnerable, and that takes courage.
Absolutely. And it's unfortunate because it's our paradox, right? It's like the first thing we look for. It's the first thing I want to see in you, but it's the last thing I want you to see in me. Yeah. Right. And so that's what keeps people stuck, right? Is that, but we know when you see it, you're like, that's pure courage. Like that was so brave.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's why my story works so well. Like you know my story, and I've talked about it a few times on this episode or on this podcast. So if you don't know it, go back and watch some of the other episodes. But a lot of it has to do with when you break out and you are so vulnerable to the point where people look at you and go, holy shit, how did you overcome that? And then you just say, well, I found a way. And the next thing you know, it just opens up that door, like that door of safety, right? They feel safe and they can actually talk to you about those kind of things.
Well, and what you've done is give them permission to be honest too.
Exactly.
Right. So when you're brave with your life, other people feel permission to be brave with theirs.
I've learned that it can make some people uncomfortable, and I love making people uncomfortable. It's like my favorite thing to do. How can I make this person uncomfortable? Let me share something that's going to make them go, whoa, I haven't thought about that.
I got a doozy for you.
So it was a 3-day extensive training course.
Yes.
Once you got your training, how did you bring that to the military?
Yeah, so the first thing I did was just connect with my husband's base. So like one of my first things, I got brought in to do like a brown bag lunch, lunch and learn kind of situation.
Hold on 1 second here. We're having some disruption.
Oh, okay.
1 second. I'm not sure what's going on with the connection. Okay, try it again.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me?
It's really choppy. I'm not sure what's going on here. Sorry, guys. Sometimes technical malfunctions, nothing we can do. Hey, I'm gonna drop you out real quick and click that link, and I'm gonna bring you back on. Hopefully that'll help reboot it. Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, sorry, guys. We have these technical malfunctions all the time. So I'll talk a little bit about vulnerability until Trish gets back on. If you don't have anybody that you can be 100% vulnerable with, you need to get new friends. Or just try to change your friends, be the water. There's often times when I give my speeches, I ask, there's a, boiling water, potato, and an egg. Which one would you rather be? And a lot of people don't realize you can be the water, and the water is, getting people to the point where they're able to be vulnerable. Let's bring Trish back on here. There we go. How's it going?
I think so. Good. Is it okay?
Yeah, it's choppy for me. Well, Greg says you sound fine, so we're just gonna keep going.
Okay. I know he's supposed to be my tech support's not even here. I was like so nervous.
Oh, you're good.
about
You're
that.
good. So how did you bring that back into the military?
Yeah. So I started, with our base, and just they brought me in for lunch and learns. I've done. They have they have like a wingman day, they call it. It's like a mental health support day. So I'll usually do some trainings there. I've done other just kind of just by invitation, I did get asked to speak in a couple of reintegration events in Idaho. And so it just kind of goes from there. Someone else, I sound like a transformer to everybody else. I just thought that.
Oh no, this is a private message. No, you're good. Keep going.
Okay. I was like, I don't want to sound like a transformer.
Yeah, it's just super echoey, and you sound like a transformer to me. So it's like I'm talking to the program director here. So
it's an unwanted
keep
identity
going.
for
You're
me.
good. Go ahead.
Yeah, transformer. Yeah, so then that's kind of been the things that I've done with the military, and then like I said, a lot of the work, some of the people that I see in my office, and so I've really brought that into my office. I mean, pretty much anybody that lets me talk about this I talk about it. Hence our conversation right now. It's like, hey, you want me to talk about it? Okay, I'll be there. Because that was my whole goal when I went to the training, and it was funny when I was there. I was like, yeah, I want to bring this to the military, and people were like, you want to bring vulnerability? You want to talk about vulnerability with the military? And I was like, I do. They're like, why not? It's a pretty high bar.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, like, wow. And I'm like, well, who will? Sometimes it's those things where it's like, who else will go? Like, someone's got to go, right? And I remember when I had that first call to go speak in Idaho, it was my first, traveling one. And right before I left, I lost my voice. I sounded like I smoked 3 packs of cigarettes a day. My voice would just stop. And I had this moment where I was like, I could cancel because all I have to do is call her and she can hear me. I sound awful.
Yeah.
And then the other part of me came and said, but who will go? Like, if you don't go, who will tell them? And I was like, well, I guess I'm going. And I sound like I smoked 10 packs of cigarettes a day. And it ended up, I got to go again then because I went,
Yeah.
And it wasn't my best work. It's, you feel frustrated because you want it to be, I want it to be good. And it was not going to be, I didn't have my full voice, but I've just felt that strongly about it since I've, started.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because like I talk so much about vulnerability. That's like the main thing that I talk about with this nonprofit. Like, you know what logotherapy is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Viktor Frankl. Yeah. So I didn't even know what it was, and I was explaining something to someone. Was like, dude, you need to read Man's Search for Meaning. Like, read that book. And so I read it, and I'm like, oh my God, it's what I've been doing, right? I obviously, as everybody knows, I can't call myself a therapist. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a counselor. I'm just a guy who figured some shit out. But the more and more you talk about Bernadette Brown stuff, makes me realize that, I should take that training. Because if you think that training helped you so much and it helps you dig into vulnerability, that's like the main thing I dig into, and I don't know why I haven't dug down the Bernadette Brown rabbit hole yet.
Well, and now there's so much more information that you can, like she has her 2 podcasts. They have Dare to Lead and Unlocking Us. So I mean, so much more access to her content and information. So I mean, that if you want to start somewhere, that's a great way to start.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. So what exactly do you do? So, how does it work with what you do now? So do people get sent to you from the VA through the vet center? Like, what exactly do you work for? What was the name of the company you work for?
I work for Minnesota Renewal Center. So that's in Shoreview, Minnesota.
Okay.
And I'm an independent contractor. So we're a group of independent contractors. Yep. And then 1 day a week, I work out at Acres for Life. So that's another little piece because I just fell in love when you saw the place. It's like I started learning about that too, and how talk about. Actually, I got introduced to the horses from one of our trainings. It was called Courage Camp, where they bring all the people who are trained in the Daring Way, and it's kind of like our professional development, but it's like at a camp. Super cool. And I just got this call to need to have more horses in my life, and how vulnerability and horses really pairs nicely. And so that was one of the things that I had talked with them. I said, I'd love to bring some of those principles and do some retreats or things like that. So that's what we started doing there. was how do I pull some of those daring way principles and then have people experience the horses as well.
Give me 1 second. I'm still having issues. I'm sorry. Give me 1 second, okay?
Okay.
All right, give me a check.
Hello?
That's fine. We'll just finish it up.
You're just so unpleasant. Sorry.
I'm gonna show everybody my interview skills here. I can't hear a word Trisha's saying. Everything sounds so transformed.
Oh, no.
I know you're gonna continue to give good information. So when I ask you questions, just expand as much as you can. And then when you're done, just stop talking. I'll ask the next question. So I'm gonna show you guys how to do this on the fly. You know what I'm saying? So just keep talking and everything like that. And I just can't hear what you're saying. So if you don't hear me responding, it's just I can't hear you. So
you just give me this blank look.
Everybody says we sound fine. So we're just going to keep going. So once you started bringing this into the military, you started doing speeches for the military as well, correct?
Yeah.
How did that all work out? How did you start that, and how did you continue to do that? Because I'm actually trying to do that myself, and I've been using you quite a bit for advice. Yeah, there you go.
It's really the networking and people knowing about it and wanting, having the need. And like I said, being connected with my husband's base, it's kind of like our family, right? And so it's like, I have this to offer. Is this something that people are interested in learning about? And then the more you do it, the more people are like, oh, we really want to hear more about this. You get asked to do different ones as well.
Oh.
So
I actually just got invited to speak for the Minnesota Communications Conference. So for all the 911 dispatchers and everything, talk about suicide prevention, as well as work-life balance, which is sweet because that's all I talk about. And the old director of the Minnesota State Patrol actually reached out to me on LinkedIn, thanks to Greg. Greg had me redo my whole LinkedIn just for motivational speaking and public speeches. And he's like, dude, you need to sign up for all of these. And so I looked at them today. I just missed the deadline. So hopefully I'll get to the next one. But I'm slowly getting to that point. And then at the same time, when it comes to we don't have to talk about cost for speeches, but I've been very much underselling myself from what Greg has been telling me. And, talking to you, it's kind of helped me figure out how I need to adjust. So, you have been a big motivator for me too. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Oh, I'm so glad. Like I said, it's one of those things where you're like, okay, I have this to offer. Is there a need, and where can I go bring? Because it feels to me like whenever I'm bringing this message, it's like I have gifts and I want to give them. And then do any of these feel like a good fit for what your organization needs?
Yeah.
Right?
I think it's fantastic. It's one of the things that we have a lot of future together. I know this is going to happen because we've talked a little bit about the retreat stuff and everything like that. So we'll dig into that in a minute, but let's talk a little bit about how you got involved with Acres for Life. Talk about Acres for Life, what it is and how it all happened, because I think it's a fantastic story.
Oh yeah. So we go back to Courage Camp where I had this really powerful horse experiences. And one of my friends is like, you need to figure out where to get more horses in your life.
Real quick, keep talking. Okay. I'm going to back out, come back in.
Okay.
So just keep going with your story. So everybody else will hear you.
All right, cool. All right. And so I reached out. I was like, well, where are there horses in Minnesota? Where could I don't know, am I supposed to go riding? Am I supposed to, I don't know what that means. So I had heard about Acres for Life and I called them and I just said, I don't know why I'm calling. I guess I just want to get more information. I'm not really looking for a job or anything. I just need more horses in my life. Could you help me with that? And so they had me come out and do a session and it just, kind of tour it and stuff. And we had this beautiful moment I'll never forget where I was talking with Lynn, the owner, and she was like, look at those horses. They're pacing at this fence. She's like, you can tell they want to go there. There's something they want over in that other field. And the gate is open. Why don't they just go?
Mm.
And then as we were talking, all of a sudden they did. They just took off and went through the gate. And I said, okay, well, I don't know if you're interested in this, but this is what I would love to offer. I would love to try and do some kind of retreats. I'd love to get training in what you do. And she's like, the gate is open. Let's do it, And so it was really special. And it's just a magical place. It's in Forest Lake. And they do equine therapy. It's all on the ground. It's not riding. So it's face to face, and the horses have the right to move wherever they want. You get to move wherever you want. And it's just a really powerful form of therapy.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. I can hear you now, by the way.
Oh, cool.
No,
Good.
I loved it. You introduced us, and me and Greg went out there. I think it was just me, you, and Greg the first time. I'm
Mhm.
pretty sure.
Yeah.
But it was beautiful. We won't talk about what we were doing the next time we were out there because I don't want people to get all pissed off. But we were taking care of some rodent issues last time we were out there, and it worked out really nice because we took said rodents and gave them to the wolf dogs, so it actually worked out nice. Circle of life. Um, but then me and Greg talked about we got to go out there and cut those trees down too. I haven't talked to Lynn yet, but we're gonna knock that out
Yeah.
soon. But I just see so much potential for me bringing groups of veterans out there and doing work for them, in turn letting us, work on the horses, because my goal is to get as many veterans out there, not only to see the horses, but to do work for them, right? So my push is to push the community service aspect of Warriors Next Adventure, where we're going to go out using groups of veterans to go do stuff. I think she wants like 2 more, what do they call those? The wind shelters, where there's, what are they called? Just like a barn?
Kind of, yeah. I mean,
Can't
yeah,
remember
I
what they're
guess,
called.
yeah.
I
I
know.
mean,
But yeah,
I'm not sure exactly what she called them, but like, yeah, like a shelter, like a windbreak.
okay. Okay. So they do equine therapy. So what do you do out there do you bring your patients out there as well?
No, I mean, I have my own clients out there.
Okay.
With I work there just one morning a week, and I see clients. And how they work out there is you have a mental health professional, and you have an equine specialist. So I'm the mental health professional. I'm not the equine specialist, and I love horses, but I'm not. And it's beautiful because then we go out with so you always have those two things, those two aspects always being taken care of.
I love it.
And then in my other work, then I'm a therapist. Right, mostly online right now still, but yeah, so that's my other job as well.
That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
That life coach job that
Yeah.
I was telling you about?
Yeah.
So I had a 3-hour interview last night.
That's a long interview.
Yeah. So long story short, he told me he is not hiring me as a life coach, but I'll explain everything else later. So
okay.
It's big things coming.
Cool.
But yeah, so thank you again for talking to me about that too, because I got to figure something out, because I love what you're doing, and it's so much schooling, and like, I'm not saying that like the school's not worth it, but it's just, I have something that works. And, looking at what you're doing, I think it's fantastic. And I'm really seriously, after talking to you about this, I'm really seriously thinking about looking at taking that Bernadette Brown training.
Okay.
Was it fairly easy to get into? How do you apply to that kind of stuff?
Well, I don't know actually right now if it's open. But at the time it was expensive. And obviously you have to fly to San Antonio and stuff too. But now they have all this, they have all these what you could do with the Dare to Lead training, because they have all that kind of stuff. I mean, that would be much easier to go and just take a Dare to Lead training.
Yeah.
And I think that would fit right with what you're doing.
Yeah, no, I think it'd be great. I've wanted to go to a Tony Robbins seminar for so long.
Well, I mean, that's the thing too. Yeah, exactly. That's the same thing where I was like, this is a big investment, but to me, the dividends, the reward has been, I mean, even just for my own life would have been worth it. Not just a matter of what it overflows into my clients, but yeah, it has just transformed just how I operate in the world. And
go ahead.
Oh, because I was going to say, we want to talk about shame resilience. We can't stop. We can't be done today without talking about that.
Oh, we'll get there for sure. That's a big point, and I had some conversations with some folks about shame the other day too. But I'm starting to realize you need to invest in yourself, right? And so, you ever read the books by Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad?
Oh, no, I've heard of it. I don't think I've read that.
Okay. If nobody's ever read that book, go read that book. It's a good book. Get the audiobook. It's super interesting. I think when you buy his book, you get a bunch of like free ones too. But he actually talked about how he started investing in himself. Like, he invested in the seminar, and he went to this business seminar, and it was like $500. He's like, why would I spend $500? It's a waste of money. And one of his friends pretty much told him to go screw himself, but he went to the seminar. And he learned how to do real estate and everything like that from the seminar. He came back, and within a year or two, he had a bunch of real estates, or a bunch of buildings and stuff like that. So it's like when you start investing in yourself, that's when growth really comes. And that's why I always tell people to go to therapy, talk to a therapist. I go to therapy like twice a month or so. I'm too busy to go once a week, but it's amazing what it can do, and then the amount of people that reach out to me and we have, life building conversations. Like everybody knows that with Warriors Next Adventure, I'm essentially a life coach for veterans, but free. I don't charge. Slowly getting into something else with that on the civilian side to actually, not eat scraps every month. Be nice to have an actual paycheck coming in.
Good to eat. Yeah.
I like food. Plus we got to go to that restaurant again. That place with the pasta. That place is amazing. What was that place called again?
Ingredients.
Oh God, that was so good. I love that place. Yeah, we're gonna have to go there again. But yeah, no, it's amazing that when you start to invest in yourself, the change that you see, right? So for anybody out there who is looking for change, right? I want you to explain, what difference did you see in yourself after experiencing that seminar, and how has it really helped push you forward in life?
Well, I'll tell you, my first example, I'll use one that happened the very first time I got asked out to my husband's base. I was going to speak. And I was so excited for it. I dropped my kids off at school. I came back home. My neighbor calls me and I was talking to her and I was like, oh my God, is it really only 8:30? It's not 9. She's like, yeah. And I was like, I just dropped my kids off at school an hour early. Panicked because they were like at the time, like first and third grade.
Yeah.
Just like mom shame immediately. Yeah. I rushed over. I called them. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like, yeah, you need to come get them. I was like, okay, I'll be right there. So I go get them. I'm like, so trying to fight a mom shame spiral. Like, I cannot believe I did that. Like, again, the shame comes in and has two messages, who do you think you are? And you're not good enough. And I was like, I can't believe I'm going to go do this speaking. I can't even tell time, apparently. Like, all these messages of like, you're not equipped. And so it was funny because after I got it all situated, I got the kids back at school and I realized the things that helped me were, my neighbor that I was talking to, she's like, oh my God, I can't believe you did that. And I was like, oof, that just fed the spiral, right?
Now you just want to punch her in the face.
Like, well, I'm just like, okay, this isn't helpful to me right now. I already feel really bad. But I talked to like the secretary. She's like, I've done that. I've done that all the time. Just these compassionate responses, right?
Sure. And then I actually sent my daughter to school without shoes once. Like, how does that happen?
It happens.
Yeah.
People, it happens. Okay. And my son was like telling everybody, my mom dropped me off early, like I was like, there's no way that I could hide this. But, shame is that thing that makes you want to hide, right? You just want to like, how do we like prevent anybody from knowing that this mistake happened? And I realized as I was driving there, so I get in my car and I'm driving to work and I'm fighting this shame spiral. And then I had a moment where I was like, and I just started laughing and I was like, you know what? Not only am I not going to hide the story, I'm actually going to lead. This is going to be my intro. And so what was a shame spiral for me turned into this kind of embarrassing story that was funny. It's funny.
Yeah.
And that was a moment that I'll never forget of like, that is how this has transformed the work. I now know how to pivot out of a shame spiral. And that's the shame resilience, because we can't become shame resistant, even though we wish we could. And sure. That, if I say anything, that's the thing I want people to hear, is that you're not doing anything wrong. Like nothing's wrong with you that you experience shame. That's part of being human. Like if you have the capacity for connection, you feel shame. And so you've not done anything wrong. And we can't fight it off. Because I think I spent a good chunk of my therapy years, feeling shame about my shame. Right. Like, I'm like, I can't kick this out. Like, I am a trained professional.
Yeah.
Why can I not eradicate this from my life? This miserable. I hate it. I don't like to feel this way. And it was such a relief when I found out, like, oh, that's actually not possible. That's not actually the goal. And I could just kind of lay that down and be like, okay. So then we talk about how do we get out of it then? We can become resilient to it, though. Sure. We can realize. And I always feel it's a little bit like, you'll like this with being your former law enforcement. I feel like it's when you know your rights. And you can start to say, you can't harass me anymore like that. Yep. Like, I know you can't keep me without this. I know you know what I mean? Like, it's like understanding what shame can and cannot do. And how do you say like, yeah, I'm going to exit this now. I don't have to stay here.
Well, knowledge is power. Half the reason for any kind of depression, or not depression, but like any kind of like massive confusion is mainly because you just don't know, like I tell people all the time, how are you going to heal yourself from PTSD or anything like this if you don't understand it? Right. And I always use the analogy. Imagine the Brazilians, the people in the Amazon rainforest, the first time they saw an aircraft, they probably lost their minds, right? Be like, oh my God, what is that? Right. Because they just don't understand it. It's
Yeah.
that simple.
And we don't talk about it. Like shame is the, like I was said, the Lord Voldemort, if you're Harry Potter fans, like that which we do not name. We don't speak about it. We don't talk about it. And that's actually the first clue that you might be experiencing some shame is that I don't want to talk about it. I want to be alone. I don't want to talk about it.
There's a lot of veterans who never deployed experience a lot of shame. So if you're a veteran listening to this and you have any kind of shame because you never deployed, it's not your fault. That's the hard thing.
And I think that's the hard part with shame too, is it has this message that you are bad, right? Like who you are is bad, and then there's nothing you can do about it, right? And so that's the really painful part about it, right? And what keeps people stuck, because and so sometimes when we talk about like knowing the language, like you said, how do you know it? First of all, we have to know when we're feeling it, right? Like, so shame is this full contact. Like if you feel like you've been sacked by a linebacker, it's a full contact emotion.
Sure.
You might be feeling some shame. It's not the only one, but it's one. So, right away, understanding like what is happening in my body, what's happening to what I'm feeling. Do I know what happened? And so that's the next part. And then what do I need to do? And almost always we need to reach out, right? Because shame needs 3 things to survive: secrecy, silence, and judgment. So we stay secret, we keep it small, we judge, like you talked about the veterans that are feeling shame, they judge themselves for something they didn't have any control over.
Yeah.
It grows exponentially, but it cannot survive empathy and compassion. So when we reach out and someone gives us kindness, just
cuts it right out.
Yeah.
And that's why it doesn't always, I always push people to go to therapy. Get a therapist, right? Find the right therapist. If you say, therapy doesn't work for me, you haven't had the right therapist.
Right.
I've had, I think 4, and 3 of them I just could not stand. Then I had one of them, he was a civilian. And so as a veteran, many veterans think the same way. Initially, I'm just like, God, screw this guy. You know what he's talking about. But I said it to myself all the time, as I tell my veterans, give them a chance, right? Civilians can empathize with what you've been through. Anybody can empathize with what you've been through, because trauma is trauma. It's essentially processed exactly the same. It's just the experience is different. So I sat and listened to him, and he was actually one that put a massive puzzle piece together for me that I've been trying to figure out for years. And it was the analogy that I tell veterans all the time. And this mixes in with shame, guilt, depression, PTSD. There's so many different things that this encompasses, because, the story of Frodo, right? A lot of people don't realize that J.R.R. Tolkien was a World War I veteran. He fought for the British, and he was in the trenches, and his therapy was writing the book, The Lord of the Rings. He was Frodo. All of the Fellowship of the Rings were his battle buddies. And the experience was going through World War I. And when he came back to the Shire, right, when everything was safe, he was sad and depressed and lonely because the adventure was done. And, in a sense, you could see how it just, it was so hard for him to realize what was going on. And then it just snapped for me. It's like, God, we are Frodo. Veterans are Frodo. We get home and everything's safe and comfortable, and there's no more adventure, which is the reasoning for Warrior's Next Adventure. And it's like, that was so important.
He carried something so heavy that no one else did.
Right.
And that was one of the reasons that it was harder for him than like Sam went and got married, right?
Yeah, exactly.
No one could understand the burden that Frodo carried. It was his alone. Right. And it impacted a lot of people. Right. But, I think I love this. I love a good story metaphor.
Well, it's fantastic, because I've been using that metaphor for years, and I didn't know the story of J.R.R. Tolkien. I didn't know he was a veteran. And so this therapist put that together for me. So that's why I tell people, get a good therapist. If they're not working for you, get a new one. Damn it.
Yes. Well, and I always tell people, therapists are like ice cream flavors. My family goes to get ice cream. We all have vastly different tastes. Everybody. Sure. And if you're going to go, you should go to one that you like, right? And that you connect. Yeah. That's actually the most predictive. What's most predictive of success is that you feel connection and you feel safe with them. And I just want to say, as a therapist, I'm super grateful that we do not have to go through everything our clients have been through in order to help them.
Yeah.
We would just be rocking in a corner somewhere in a padded
I know,
room.
Right? And I think that's why what I do works so well, is because, unfortunately, I have experienced a lot, like massive amounts of trauma. And it sucks, but at the same time, like, I've figured out the path. And as long as you have somebody who can empathize with you, they don't have to experience the exact same things you've been through, you know? Like shame is pretty universal feeling, right? But what
It is.
causes it, that's the difference. So
And I would say it's unique. It's unique like your fingerprint. Like whenever I tell
yeah,
a story about a shame spiral I had, without fail, someone comes up to me and is like, I don't know why you feel shame about that. That wouldn't bother me at all. I was like, because it's mine.
yeah.
It's my shame fingerprint. You
It's
know,
how we're
it's
processing it in our brain and how
yeah.
everything is mapped. And it's like, why does this affect us? You know, Tony Robbins says something that I steal this all the time, but I always mention him is, you know, certain things affect us in certain ways because of the meaning that we assign to it. You know, you're not going to assign the same meaning to something that I am, you know,
Exactly.
and shame is something that I don't really have anymore, to be honest. Like because I just kind of opened up and I just whatever. I don't really give a shit anymore because I love what I do and I found my passion. I found my path, you know. And I truly feel like if you work through this shame and you work through your shame and you actually get to that point where you accept the things that you've been through and why is this causing me shame, and you realize that hey, it's okay that I feel this way,
Yeah.
you know, but I don't have to, you know.
And what I hear you saying too is you owned your story. You
100%.
didn't run
Yeah.
from your story anymore. You didn't try to hide it. You didn't try to edit out the parts that you think were unsavory or you didn't think people would want to hear. You owned it. You said, this is my story.
Yeah.
And it's been a blessing. I mean, it's been something that's been really powerful for people when you
Oh,
share
it's
it.
been amazing. And then telling some of your stories too. Like I was on Jiu-Jitsu Dummies podcast. By the way, if anybody listens to or trains jiu-jitsu, go check out Jiu-Jitsu Dummies podcast. You guys are amazing. So I was on 4 episodes, and the last episode was something like that actually gave me a lot of shame initially. But when I went back and looked at it, you learn to laugh at these things and you move on. I shit my pants in an MMA fight, right? That's not something that anybody wants to admit, right? You know, I told that story quite a few times and it's kind of funny, but at the time I was just like, I am worthless. Like,
Well, and,
you
and
know,
don't you think it comes because you're like, man, I don't want to be a person who has this story.
yeah,
Right? Like
exactly.
that. You're like, I don't want, it's funny if someone else does it, but I don't want to be the one that has the story.
Yeah. Well, now
Right?
I want to make people laugh all the time. You know, like most people know I want to be a stand-up comedian. I've been wanting to do it my whole life, but I'm too much of a pussy to actually go do it. But I tell all these stories literally as practice. And so anytime I get a chance to make people laugh, it's like, you know what? My shame has literally become like my comedy. You
Mhm.
know, you
Well,
have to transform shame into something else.
and that's where when shame can transform into embarrassment, right? You know what I mean? Where you're like,
Mhm.
because embarrassment is something that, and people sometimes will use embarrassment as shame. Like they'll just be like, I was embarrassed. I was so embarrassed I couldn't sleep.
I
You
thought
weren't
they were the same thing, to
embarrassed.
be honest.
Yeah, right. And so that's why this language, how we talk about it, embarrassment is this funny, fleeting, I know I'm not alone and I can talk about it. Like if I have lettuce in my teeth, right, and someone says it, I know I'm not the only one who's ever done that. You mispronounced my last name. You know you're not the only one that's ever done that. Trust me.
I
You're
pronounced
not,
everybody's name wrong.
right? But I mean, I'm just saying, like, you might be like, shoot, I wish that didn't happen, or I'm embarrassed that happened, but I know I'm not alone and I can
Sure.
talk about it. And shame sometimes starts and can transform into that when we own
Sure.
it, when we start to go, this is what's happening, you know, and how do we reach out for the support we need? We name it too. And one of the things that we found is so helpful is how wanted and unwanted identities can be like a super highway to shame. Like, right, like I don't want to be someone who does this. I don't want to be someone who forgets names or whatever, right? And so that can be, and when we start to know that, then we can be like, that's what's happening right now. Shoot, this happened. I don't want to be someone who this happens to. What do I need? How do I reach out for my support section, right? How do I find the support section inside myself, right? Because that's actually most important. Like, do I have one inside of myself that can say, what are you going to do? That happened. You know,
Sure.
you did the best you could with the resources you had at the time, right?
Yeah, and what would you say is one of the best avenues to just begin to, because obviously you're not going to be able to tell people how to, hey, get rid of your shame. What would you say is like the first steps to actually start walking that path to forgiveness of yourself? How would you handle that?
So are you asking me about shame resilience or forgiveness of yourself?
Forgiveness of yourself, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
truly believe that forgiveness of yourself is literally the key to happiness. You know, we all talk about forgiving other people, but nobody ever talks about forgiving yourself. And I
Well, and I
truly
would
believe that.
say,
Go ahead.
Go.
You're good. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, it starts with self-compassion too. Like, is there a part inside of you that can talk to yourself kindly and to say, that was hard. You did the best you could with what you had at the time. You know, sometimes we forget that piece because it's like, well, I've done better, or I could do better, or now I know better. It's like, at the time you didn't. You know, that was that was the knowledge you had at the time. That was the resources you had at the time. You didn't know. And then, you know, you're human. This is part of being human. You know, we all suffer. We all make mistakes. It's part of the human condition. And then what do you need? You know, let's go get some ice cream. Let's go take a bath. Let's go call a friend. Let's go to dinner, whatever, you know, like, what do you need then to offer yourself? Because you're the expert on you, right? Like, only you can know.
I tell everybody, if you know, I preach meditation, right? I don't push people to meditate, but if somebody wants to, I do guided meditation for people. I've taught, I think in the last week, I taught like 7 people how to properly meditate in my vision.
Properly.
But I think people do it wrong, you know, and I'm going to have somebody else who's really big into meditation on soon. And we're actually going to dig into meditation. I love meditation. I've been using it for years. I've been studying Buddhism since 2016. You know, I tell people all the time, obviously not a Buddhist because I swear too much and I like meat, but you know, I like the aspects of it. And I always tell people is every answer that you need is inside you, right? So a therapist, you know, myself, a doctor, medication, all that is to help you find yourself. It's to help you learn how to fix yourself. You know, no therapist is going to fix you. I am not going to fix you. You have to do the work yourself. But people like you are great guides.
Well, and what I've found sometimes is helpful is if you don't have that kind, wise, gentle voice in yourself, sometimes you borrow it from other people until you have it until you're able to say it yourself.
Yeah, like lean on somebody. You know, lean on somebody.
Or like sometimes clients will tell me, I was feeling so bad and I thought about what you would say to me.
Sure.
Right? So they already, and I'm like, now you have it in you, right? Like, I'm not actually there, but they know what I would say. They could hear what I would say. And now it starts to become, they played it for themselves, right?
Sure.
It becomes their own voice.
So you got about 30 seconds left. How, I know, right? This went by so quick. How do people get a hold of you? How do people get a hold of a proper therapist? What would you recommend to somebody who is struggling with family? They need marriage counseling, anything like that. What would you give them?
Right. Well, I mean, if you needed to get a hold of me, you can look at Minnesota Renewal Center. Wohlfeil counseling at Comcast.net is my email. Which good luck spelling that. You probably have to put that in the
I'll type it in the comments.
Exactly. I would just say to look. One thing I tell people is look at your insurance too, because sometimes if you need to use your insurance, start there with your referrals, because you're going to be mad if you find a therapist you think is awesome and your insurance won't cover it. Yeah. And then look at their bios. Start somewhere. Just make a call. And I will say right now that the therapy realm right now, the need for mental health is incredible right now. It's very high. So you might have to wait a little bit, but just don't let that stop you. Make a call now so that you can get in. You know, and therapists are just here to help you hold a heavy story. We're just your navigators, right? You're always going to be driving the car, so at any time you can go anywhere else you want to.
I love it.
Help hire someone and get you where you want to go.
There you go.
Right.
I'm going to drop you off. Don't go anywhere. Trish, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you. And thanks for letting me kidnap your husband for a couple weeks.
Thanks so much. I'm so glad you had fun. Take care.
Thank you. So go check out her stuff. I just shared her email in the comments if you want to get a hold of her. As usual, every episode goes to helping. I had a brain fart on me. Every episode benefits Warriors Next Adventure and Houses for Warriors. Go check out both of those websites. Go check out Veterans Action Report on Facebook, Instagram. I got to get better at posting more on Instagram. But thank you, KJRA, for giving us this opportunity. And thank you guys for listening.
Perfect.